dugsiyada nuuraddiin schools.
Okay class, welcome back. It is me, Abdullah teacher, again with a grammar lesson. Today we are going to talk about grammar lesson. It will be about only two tenses, simple present tense and simple past tense. Before we start simple present and simple past tense, we will explain what active is or what past voice is, what what voice itself is, and then we will see some examples if we will have time. Okay, let's get started. Understanding active and passive voice. Perhaps you have seen so many times passive voice, active voice. So today we are going to understand what active and passive is. We will differentiate them and we will see them, the differences. Voice. Before I say active or passive, what voice is? Voice is the form of a verb that takes to indicate whether the subject of the verb performs or receives the action. Let me say again, voice is the form of a verb. It is a type of verb that takes to indicate, to show whether the subject. That means we know that each sentence is maybe a simple sentence comprised of subject, verb, and object. Subject is the receiver, something is the doer of the action, and object is the receiver of the action. So, whether the subject of the verb performs, that means whether the subject of the verb performs or receives the action. There are two types of voice. That means there is an active and passive voice. Active and passive voice. We are not going to study all tenses, but we will see only two tenses, the simple present and simple past tense. Active voice. What is an active voice? Active voice indicates that the subject that means it illustrates that the subject of the verb is acting. The subject of the verb, of that verb, is doing something because the subject does or acts upon the verb in such sentences. The sentences are said to be active voice. That means these sentences, the subject do the action. That means they do the action, they don't receive. So this is an active voice. Here we have a passive voice. In a passive voice or in a passive voice sentences, the subject and object flip-flop. The subject becomes the passive recipient of the action. In other words, if I say, I lived in Hargeisa last year. I lived in Hargeisa last year. I is the subject of, I'm doing that action. But if I change into past voice, Hargeisa was lived last year. Because the subject is being or acted upon is passive, such sentences are said to be, that means these types of sentences are said to be passive voice. There are some reasons for doing active voice. We don't simply use active voice and passive voice, but there are some reasons to use active voice. Here, For some writers, you can be a writer when you're writing something, or if you're writing a novel or something else. Some writers prefer, most writers prefer. That means they like to use active voice. Why they use it, or why they like it? Because it's more direct, it is straightforward, every person can understand. For some, when you are writing something, there are something you have to keep in mind. Your audience, the person who will receive your writing, the person who will read your writing. So you have to think that everything will go straightforward. So they use active voice. If you compare this to active, the waiter drop it. The waiter, a person who serves in a restaurant, the waiter drop it. It falls down the tray of the food. He was carrying a food, a tray full of material, maybe dishes or maybe drinks. Drop it the tray. Tray. Yes. Tray of food. This is an active voice. Here is the subject of these sentences, and the food is the object. The tray of food was dropped. Now we don't know even right now. It is, if we stop there, it is it's straightforward and every person can understand, but there is no subject. So if we don't like to mention the subject, we can keep like this. The tray of food was dropped by the waiter. This we call agent. Sometimes we add and sometimes we leave or we omit. When to use passive voice? Still, we haven't started simple present or simple past, but we are in the introduction. When to use passive voice? Perhaps there are some times that you don't need to use passive voice, and also there are some situations that you don't need to use active voice. For example, if you see someone dead in the street, maybe you say somebody was dead. Somebody was killed. Who killed it? If you don't like to tell or mention the person who did that one, you can use passive voice in order to avoid some problems, or maybe sometimes it's very hard to tell the doer of that action. In general, the passive voice is less direct. The passive voice is less directed. That means mostly you cannot understand completely all the information, the subject, verb, object like this. Less forceful and less concise than the active voice. According to active voice. Use passive voice in the following situations. Here we have got about 3 situations which you can use passive voice. In here, use passive voice when you do not know who performs an action. Use passive voice when you do not know who performs an action. For example, you left your pen on the table, and then you don't know who has stolen it. And then you said, my pen was stolen. You said my pen was stolen. We don't know who stole it, who stole it. We don't know. For example, you said Ahmed. If I say like this, Ahmed, Umar, or Ali like this, let's say Mr. Ahmed or Mr. Ali has stolen my pen. We know it. Who stole it? Mr. Ali. But in here, my pen was stolen. We don't know. Even if it's you, we don't know. My pen was stolen. This is less concise. Next, another reason that you can use passive voice is when you do not care who performs an action. when you don't care about who performs, that means who did that action. If you don't care about who did it, that means you don't need to tell that subject. So use passive when you do not care who performs an action. And finally, use passive voice when you want. You can use passive voice when you want to emphasize the receiver or de-emphasize the performer. In here we are shifting from subject to object. We don't need to emphasize the subject, but instead we are going to emphasize the object. In the next lesson, yes, this is next lesson. We are going to see in details simple present tense, and simple past. Before we get on, let's recap. We said that passive voice and active voice, there is a difference, there is a distinction between them. We said that when the subject receives, when, I think that's all about this. I think we are going to continue next lesson for details. Let's see here. Yes, this is the end of this slide, but I just want to explain simple present in brief. Although it's revision and you have seen before, we just want to explain a little about simple present tense, and then when we finish simple present tense, we will start simple past. Let's start with simple present tense. As you all know that simple present tense right? Simple present tense. Yes. First, we just want to define simple present tense, and then we will have some examples, and then we will change into present to active voice into passive voice. You all know that simple present tense is used for simple present tense. Simple present tense is used for an action okay, which happens every day. All right. Yes, like this. Simple present tense is used for an action which happens every day. This is an habitual action, something that you do every day, something that repeats again and again. It's happening today, it will happen tomorrow, and it happened yesterday, so it is happening again and again. For example, I play football every day. In this, I play football every day. Next, they visit to Berbera every summer. They visit to Berbera. They visit Berbera every summer. Let's add one more example. She cleans the door. In simple present tense, when we are going to change from active into passive, we just want to change the verb. Instead of using the subject, we are using the object. For example, I play football. I play football every day. In here, I is the subject and play is the verb, and this is the object. We just want to change in the place of subject, object. Here we are going to start like this. 1, football, football. When we are in here, if the subject is singular, we are using is, and if the subject is plural, we are using are, and the verb must be past participle. Football, in here, this is a singular. Football is played every day. Every day. If you want, you can stop there, or you can change I into object. This is by me. Football is played every day. Number 2, they visit to Berbera every summer. They visit to Berbera every summer. Like previous example, we are going to change here they, and then in the place of they, we are putting Berbera. This is the object. Berbera. Berbera, still we have singular in this subject. Berbera is visited every summer. Berbera is visited every summer. And the last example here, she cleans the doors. Here we have the subject she and the verb is clean. Why did we add s? Because third personal pronouns he, she, it, we add es, so clean. Here we have she cleans the door. The doors, here is a plural. The doors are cleaned. The doors are cleaned. The doors are cleaned. We can keep it like this, or we can change this subject into object. So the doors are cleaned by her. This is by an agent. This is called an agent. By her. Okay, that's all for today. I hope to see you again in the next lesson. We will see more examples about simple present and simple past for the coming lesson, inshallah. That's all for today. Thanks very much for your time.